Anyway, good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday the 14th. Okay, quotes up on the board behind you, and there's a Three Wooden Crosses song posted on the bulletin board site for you that goes with this. This is where the quote came from. It's not what you take with you from this world when you go, it's what you leave behind when you go. Just taken right out of the song. I don't know if it's a quote by someone else I never discovered. I just happened to hear it in this song. Okay, if you read your bulletin post, it tells you when the questions in the worksheet were due today. Meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and start Thomas Aquinas, chapter 7. St. Thomas Aquinas. He has a lot of borrowed things from other philosophers, but they all did as they made the great conversation and proceeded in history. Aquinas' main teachings are centered around three things: divine truth, the unseen, what is yet to come, or I think your book, even when I reread it, said it's the mystery of the unseen, and then earthly things that are now with us, upon us, and how we react and how we question those three things. Divine things, the unseen, yet to come things, and earthly things. Now he has some special skills that he tried to project, and he was one of those that was they called an exact writer. He wrote with clarity, and he wrote in an orderly fashion. You're going to see here in a little bit that he has some steps in which you are to ask things and to question things. Sometimes you may get in a verbal debate with someone, or just maybe yourself trying to question why this is so, or why is that so, and that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. Aquinas wants you to argue, read between the lines, understand before you act. It's kind of something I remember my folks, particularly my dad, would say, think. Think literally before you do something or before you say something that you're going to regret. It's really hard to take back words. Sometimes it's easier to take back your actions, like a physical action. I mean, if you threw something and broke it, it's kind of hard to fix that. But it's the broken item, but it's something you can do. But when you speak harshly or bad words towards someone or something, it's hard you can't take those words back and change them. And you can actually ask for forgiveness. Okay, he also documented that the sacred and the secular worlds must come together as created in God, as we're created in God's image, our hearts. We need to see that the two are mixed. And a couple other things, just like Boethius and before Boethius, this is the age of still the Middle Ages. I didn't tell you his dates, but I'm going to do it right now since it's where the Middle Ages, 1225 to 1274, and he actually overlaps somewhat with Dante. But anyway, going back, he helped also pave the way to the scientific and industrial revolutions. And he spoke more about the mixing of the two. The scientific reasoning of things is not the only answer. From that and from questioning things, we strive towards change, and in this case, industrialization of the world. And remember now, we're up in the 1200s. Boethius was back in the 480 to something era, right after the official fall of Rome. Okay, he understood the new covenant, the new Christian civilization that was flourishing all over the world, and it was taking off and leaving the old pagan Roman style behind. As you already know now, the Roman Empire, as it existed, no longer does so. The influence of Christianity has dominated it. Okay, one more thing. He likes and wanted to be taken literally from step 1 to step 50, let's say. There's a logical step that precedes each step. And you're seeking a passion for truth, goodness, and order. Now, you must take these steps in order. You can't go from step 1 and step 2 and get what you need, he says. They're clear-cut, and they must be done that way, or it just doesn't make any sense, according to him. I suppose we could throw something in there. Now, before I break it down into things in which happiness can be proven in his I am who I am, the 5 proven ways God exists, because he's challenging, and he says in my Summa Theological, in his writing, he says the divine providence can be proven if you listen to my steps. But it happens to be 5 steps in that also. But his questioning steps come in 5 also. This is the basic structure of each one. 1, you have a question. And usually the question is stated whether this is or this is true. This is why. That, which is step 2, the objections he brings up next. Okay, here's things that can go wrong with that. And then he gives you a third chance. And it's called, just in the short term, on contrary. On the contrary, this could happen. But on the contrary, the sun's still going to come up, on the contrary. But that's kind of like his first 3 steps of just, and then we're going to deal in that a little more thorough. 4, I answered that thought or feeling or with this. Let me give you this. I answered that this way, and this is why. And if there is more than one objection, which every question usually has, or everything that you question out there, is step 5. And that step 5 continues. Like he says, each objection is answered by what's true or false in it. Well, this part of a question is true, and this part of the question is false. So on the contrary, let's go to this part that's true, look at several things, and then we'll go back and say something. Why is that false? Right now I'm not giving you a direct example, but that's the thought process or the structure to attack your question. The question itself, whether this is so, 2, the objections that it might rise in your mind. On the contrary, I will answer that with this interpretation, perhaps this interpretation and this interpretation. And then each of those objections of the interpretation will have answers also. That makes sense to you. I hope it does a little bit, but we're going to go back and look at those steps, and hopefully that will clear it up a little bit. And when he does these 5 steps, by the way, to prove that God exists, he does that same line of questioning, by the way. Okay, I still got green lights. I was just nervous. Now, on page 165, well, before we go there, just open your chapter to page 146. This is where the summary begins, and and they actually write it out black and white. I just want you to look. His first question, and we're not going to do this one yet, whether God exists. And here's his first objection, second objection. He has 2 of them. On the contrary, I answer with this, and you can see that. And he does that through all the principles. And then in this part of the summary, he's actually going through the 5 steps of why and how God exists. And we're going to come back to that. Now you can go to page 164. Maybe it's actually 163. Okay. I'm totally convinced that St. Thomas was the greatest and wisest and the most intelligent human theologian who ever lived. Why? Let's first be reason to be told the truth. Nothing trumps that. Truth is number 1. Second, he's the master of common sense. What he says is always what it sounds reasonable in this case. Though he says it might be difficult or technically questioned. And he uses another person that we're going to be looking at. Third, he was not just a head, but the heart, a saint, and a practical man. Kings, even the peasants and the popes wrote to him for advice. Fourth, he combined 2 essential goals of thinking better than anyone else: profundity and clarity. He wrote about the most difficult and profound questions a man could ask: God and man, good and evil, life and death, virtue and vice, soul and body, intellect and will, predestination and free will, nature and grace. That's a lot of territory he covers. And if you don't read anything else, and you can look this up, read what he says about predestination. There's another individual later that we'll be looking at, based everything on predestination. You're predestined this, and this. I just want you to think about that. Okay, before we go back to those steps again, can either one of you guys tell me why you think God exists? Think about that. I know you think about it. I do too. I question it all the time. I have another song that I'm going to play for my wife. We got a special occasion coming up Thursday, and it's a Willie Nelson song, but it's got some real deep thought to it, and it's called Our Song, and it's a video that really says something about people that you love or people that... And anyway, time enough to think about it. Audrey, why do you think God exists? No wrong answers. Just because it's so? Someone told you? What makes you think that? What? Can't hear you. He gives you purpose? that what you said? Yeah, but how does he give you purpose? What makes you want to seek God? It's something you were told, something you saw, someone special in your life? Is it something that you discovered accidentally? Uh, for both of you sitting here, reading the Bible, did that stimulate you? For me, it wasn't. Was it a group? How did you get to the point you are right now? Is what the question is. And on the contrary, what happens? You get offline sometimes, but what got you to the point that you're at right now? I'm willing to bet neither one of you are where you want to be yet. You're not at the ultimate. There's always something you can pick up or learn or about God and about the journey. To what Boethius and who forgot the one right before him talked about. You're truly not there until you're there with him. And that. But okay, there's enough evidence there. So what do you think? Same with you. What sparked that? Okay, first of all, I don't know if you guys heard that. It says what he was told, and then some evidence that he saw. So, what part of the age process were you? Well, you could, yeah, because I think that's part of it. But who told you stuff at first? Family. Even though I'm thinking my family wasn't real strong, but they were Christians. We spent a lot of time in church. I'm pretty sure my dad went through some things. He became on the church council. I don't. He died too early for me to transition from what I felt, because I wasn't in a good state in my life when he died. Not because he died, but I wasn't accepting things like I should. And now, if he would have lived to 70, 80, he just barely turned 60 when he passed away. Just a couple months. So technically he was 59. So we never really got into that deep thought. So family. Okay, you mentioned evidence. What kind of evidence did you see, or read, or feel?
I'd say the biggest things were just the nature of things and how creation and the way the world operates and that
Okay, observing nature and how life works. Um,
also
Biblical truth, like reading the Bible. Okay, when did you start reading the Bible? For serious. I remember in Sunday school, they gave us little Bibles, and then we'd have to turn to this and read it, and I did, and then your teacher would instruct you what that meant. Sometimes we would, when we were really young, we would play act them out, or what's this, But there's that exposure. It wasn't just family. It was biblical, but it wasn't where you read it for understanding. And that's one of my weakest areas in my life. Is, sometimes I took this year-long Bible study class from our church. That helped a lot. But the interpretation that you get personally is sometimes so much different. Now I recognize things, and I'm not a memorizer, but anyway. Audrey, how about you? Anything else? Was it family teachings. I saw your head, I think, go up and down earlier. What other things got you to this point? It's a tough question. Okay. I want to say this. I will. I'm wondering sometimes when you're just out doing your nature walks, you're out doing something, you get for me it was a feeling. I can remember sitting after I was divorced and in a mood that I wondered why this happened. We both were for going away from each other. But I didn't understand. But I can remember sitting on the porch or the patio, just looking up at the stars and thinking, and I did this before, but I let it go by quickly, is, wow, how'd that get there? I knew some of the scientific stuff. Wow. Oh, yeah. I hope you guys are hearing this a little bit. Uh, so, it's to me, it's like one of the arguments he talks about the mystery of the unseen. I would say when I concluded, there's got to be something. If you want to call it God or Jesus, and historically that's been passed down for centuries and thousands of years. So I got to believe. And what if there wasn't? Then what? So deep down, it just has to be. Okay. Now, I like how he starts, whether God exists. On the contrary, God says this, because the question is whether God exists. And on the contrary, I am who I am, saying I can prove the existence of God in 5 ways. Now, this is St. Thomas, and he uses, I don't know where it is in your textbook, I have some notes here. First, he used the argument of motion, and I want you to get this. It's kind of a different way of looking at it. Whatever is in motion, you guys have all heard the laws of motion. Whatever is in motion is put into motion by another. Okay, he didn't use the word object. There must be a first mover, and that first mover is understood as God. Now, the straight scientific way of that is you're going in a straight line, and you'll continue to go in a straight line until act upon another object, say that bumps into you. The old scientific and actually new, but it's still there. But the key is who is the first thing, and he calls it the first mover that changes. And it's kind of what we were talking about. Somebody out there was the first mover. And he's attributing the first mover always as God. And of course, he was a Christian. That was a study. His second way that, in the summary, that he proves that God is I am who I am, exists, is the nature of efficient cause. It is found nothing can be caused of itself. Okay, this is that dreaming we ask ourselves when we're sitting and looking at the stars. They all follow an order. There's the first cause, the second cause, the third cause, etc. Therefore, it's necessary to admit the first cause is like the first mover is God. So the nature of efficient cause, he calls it. That's step two. The first one was the argument of motion in the first mover. The second one is the nature of efficient cause, and that is also God. Now, notice he put in there's more than one cause, but the original first cause for something, let's say the earth. Somebody had to, biblically we're told he created the heavens and the earth, but that first cause, again, would be God, and then there's other things to fill or to give you purpose. Then I wrote, my third way is through the possibility and necessity. He says, in nature, things are found to be generated. Every necessary thing is caused by another. Existence of beings, that would be humans, can be only generated by another. This another happens to be God. God created Adam and Eve. Okay, that's the first necessity, possibility, and we know that. And then you go back to number two, the first cause, and you go back to number one. What started the whole process was God. And that's basically what he's saying quickly without reading in great depth here. That way you can take quicker notes. Step 4, the argument whether God exists, is taken from gradation or gradation. Gradation. Okay, now, another person in our studies way later on, has a lot to do with this one. It's a series of successive changes, stages, or degrees. Evolution. You got to be not careful, but you got to think about evolution. Is the original Adam and Eve, all of us are images of God. But if we looked at true Adam and Eve right now, would they look exactly like us? Would they have, 5 fingers? It's just the question. Okay, the ultimate is called the maximum. And this comes from gradation or gradation, however you like to pronounce it. And the maximum is what any genus, meaning species, can develop. Category above species like plants and animals, for example. Then there must be a cause for this. And that cause, again, is God. Question on that? It's called the maximum that we can develop. That's another way of saying it. Do we ever get to that maximum? That would be a question I ask myself. My development. Now, my development could be mental, understanding of the Bible, understanding the universe and the things around me. I want to get this 5th one in before we turn the camera off. Okay, and he says, there's a lot more to it than what I'm saying, but we got to get something in today. The 5th way is the governance of the world. This which lacks intelligence, such as natural bodies, act for an end nearly always the same way. To obtain the best results, these things cannot move to their own end unless directed by some other being. And this being must have knowledge and intellect. This being exists to whom all things in nature are directed. Remember who said that? The one we just got done. What is the nature of all things? And what is man? Okay, and this happens to be God. Confused? There is some. Now, in your book, they spend much more time breaking them down in the question process that I already gave you. On the contrary, this is this, just so you remember. Okay, we're going to stop there. And hopefully this tape will be working right and you can play it many times and get some of this. I know my classmates here couldn't get it all written down. I hope they understand it a little bit. Okay, thank you. I still have green lights.